in a quiet corner of the city, where the noise of life seemed to fade into distant echoes. There was a small park that most people passed by without a second glance. Every morning, as the sun slowly rose above the tall buildings, an old man would sit alone on a worn wooden bench. His clothes were clean but old, his hands rough, and his eyes. They carried stories no one had ever stopped to hear. People walked past him every day. Some were busy checking their phones. Some were rushing to work. Some simply didn't care. To them, he was invisible. They never asked his name. They never wondered why he was there. They never noticed the quiet dignity in the way he sat, or the sadness hidden behind his calm expression. But what no one knew was that this man had once been everything. Years ago, he was a successful builder. He had built homes, schools, even parts of the very city people now walk through without noticing him. He had a family, a loving wife, a daughter who used to run into his arms every evening. Back then, his life was full of laughter. But life has a way of changing everything. One accident, one tragic day, and everything he loved was taken away. His wife passed away in a sudden illness. His daughter moved far away after getting married, slowly losing contact. And just like that, the man who once had everything had nothing, except memories. So he came to this park every day, not because he had nowhere to go, but because this was the last place he remembered feeling alive. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The old man kept coming back to the same bench, sitting in the same position, watching the world move on without him. Sometimes, he would smile softly when he saw children playing. Other times, his eyes would fill with tears as he remembered his own daughter, laughing just like them. But no one ever noticed. Until one day, something changed. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, walked into the park. She wasn't like the others. While everyone else rushed past, she slowed down. She noticed the old man. At first, she simply observed him from a distance. The way he sat so still. The way his eyes seemed to be searching for something. Or someone. There was something about him that didn't feel ordinary. The next day, she came back again. And the next. Each time, she sat a little closer. Until one morning, she finally gathered the courage to approach him. "Excuse me," she said gently, her voice warm and kind. The old man looked up, surprised. No one had spoken to him in a long time. "Yes," he replied softly. "May I sit here?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he nodded. That simple moment changed everything. At first, their conversations were short. She would ask simple questions. "How are you today? Do you come here often?" And he would respond politely, but briefly. Years of loneliness had built a wall around him. But the young woman was patient. She didn't force him to talk. She simply showed up. Every day. Sometimes she brought coffee. Sometimes she brought food. But most importantly, she brought presents. Slowly, the old man began to open up. He told her about his past, about the buildings he had helped create, about his wife, the love of his life, about his daughter, the little girl who once meant the world to him. As he spoke, his voice trembled. Not because he was weak, but because no one had listened to him in years. The young woman listened carefully. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just listened. And for the first time in a long time, the old man felt seen. Days passed, and something beautiful began to grow between them. A connection, not of blood, but of kindness. And sometimes, that is even stronger. One cold morning, the old man didn't show up. The bench was empty. The young woman waited. Minutes passed, then hours. But he never came. A strange feeling of worry filled her heart. The next day, she came again. Still no sign of him. She asked around, but no one knew who he was. After all, to most people, he had never existed. Determined to find him, she remembered something he once mentioned. A small, old apartment on the edge of the city. She searched for hours until she finally found it. The building was worn down, almost forgotten. With a deep breath, she knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Just as she was about to leave, the door slowly opened. There he was, weaker, paler, but still alive. "You came." He whispered, surprised. Tears filled her eyes. "Of course I came," she said. "You matter." In that moment, something inside the old man broke, and healed at the same time. From that day on, everything changed. The young woman began visiting him regularly, not just in the park, but at his home. She cleaned his apartment. She brought him meals. She made sure he was no longer alone. But more than anything, she gave him something he thought he had lost forever: hope. Weeks later, she had an idea. She brought him back to the park. But this time, something was different. She had organized a small gathering. People from the neighborhood, children, even strangers. They were all there for him. Confused, the old man looked around. "Why?" he asked. The young woman smiled. "Because people should know your story." One by one, people listened as she shared who he was. A man who had built parts of the city. A man who had loved deeply. A man who had been forgotten, but never stopped being worthy. Tears filled the eyes of many. Some approached him. Some thanked him. Some simply sat beside him, in silence. But this time, he was no longer invisible. As the sun set that day, the old man sat on the same bench. But everything felt different. He wasn't alone anymore. And as he looked at the young woman, he smiled. Not a sad smile, but a peaceful one. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person to remind someone that they are still seen, that they are still valued,